You're listening to Miss Style, Strength, and Grace with Deidra Murphy. This is your one-stop shop for style, fashion, health, and fitness. Deidra's passion is to help empower women to reach their fullest potential, both inside and out. Deidra and her guests will be discussing how to develop your style, health, and lifestyle hacks to energize your day and inspire you to keep reaching higher levels of success. Deidra is a professional fashion stylist, health guru, and Mrs. Washington 2017. It's time to get open and honest with Deidra.
Well, hello and welcome, listeners, to today's episode of Miss Style, Strength, and Grace. I am super eager to share today's guest, and I recently met her actually in person, and it's kind of a funny story, which we'll hopefully get a chance to talk about a little bit, but both of our husbands know one another, so I was eager to meet our guest today. Her name is Tanji Johnson, and I got to meet her at a chiropractic seminar over in Vancouver, Washington back in September, and I was a little bit starstruck to meet her. And with my show being called the Style, Strength, and Grace podcast, not only do I like to share inspiring stories to help other listeners reach their goals, but I hope to provide insight about ways that other women have pushed through barriers, reached new levels, and are creating the life that fulfills their purpose. So Tanji is a guest that truly represents each aspect of the title of my show. Not only does she have a background in modeling and fitness, but she's incredibly strong both inside and out. And in my opinion, she embodies the sense of humble grace that I truly admire. So as a former Army brat, she grew up in Germany as well as Korea, and she went on to become a member of the Air Force. But she's no stranger to discipline and a strong work ethic. After separating from the armed services, Tanji went on to get involved in fitness training and competitions as a fun way to promote her own healthy lifestyle. So she began competing in fitness in 1988, and she's an 11 times IFBB fitness champion, a 4-time winner of the Arnold Classic Champions, and competed professionally for over 18 years in 54 professional categories. Woo! Since retiring from competing, Tanji has now started her own fitness and posing physique team, which has grown to be the largest in the Northwest. Plus, she started her own fitness competition called the Tanji Johnson Classic. You might even recognize her from her role as Stealth on NBC's American Gladiators. So let's welcome the amazing Tanji Johnson to the show.
Hi, you guys.
Hi there. Yes, no, I want to obviously talk about a little bit of how we got to know one another. But first, why don't you give my listeners a little glimpse into who you are and what you do?
You did such a great job with the intro. Can I just say ditto?
You're like, all that. There we go.
Well, it's one thing when you listen to a resume, and it's something else when you actually hear how all that evolved. So I would like to start by saying I proudly grew up in a big family with my mom and dad. My mother's Korean. My father is African American, and he met her when he was serving in the Army in Korea. And so they had 5 kids. So I love that I have 2 brothers and 2 sisters that I grew up with. I love growing up in a culturally diverse upbringing because I used to make jokes about how my mom could cook soul food, but I didn't even know that it was soul food because my mom cooked it. And so my relatives on my dad's side were super impressed. And because I was a military brat, we moved every 3 years. I think I was bouncing around until basically high school, where I ended up in South Carolina. And that, I just look back and it just made me realize that those experiences as a young girl made me learn how to meet new people and be adaptive. And so a lot of who I am is highly adaptive in different scenarios. And so I ended up going to the military myself. I went to the United States Air Force Academy, and I like to give the Air Force Academy and the military credit for the core values that I basically learned that are fundamental in my life. And I'll just repeat those for those that don't know the Air Force core values, but it is integrity first, service before self, and excellence in all you do. And I feel like I've been trying to live up to that ever since. So I served in the Air Force as an aircraft maintenance officer for 5 years, and that's when I got into the sport of bodybuilding. And so I basically, as you said, I had a long career. I was a competitive athlete, and during that time, I started serving in different leadership roles, ranging from personal trainer, and then contest prep coach to a judge to promoter. These are all ways that I've served the industry. And now that I've retired, what I continue to do and what I'm passionate about is leading people. It's just the venue for how I do that looks different depending on what I'm doing. So that kind of brings you to where I am today, but not to forget that now I'm also a wife, newly married, as of about 2 years ago. So, you know, when you get married in your 40s, and it's okay, I don't mind telling everybody I'm going to be 44 next month. But when you get married at 42, you know, it's like you've lived your whole life doing your own thing and just really establishing yourself. And now I'm happy to be in a partnership with my husband, Brandon, and we're learning a lot together.
Oh, I love that. And I totally understand. I mean, I still feel like a newlywed, even though my husband and I are coming up on 6 years of marriage now, which
Yay.
That's actually a good little segue into how I met you is why don't you share about what your husband does and some of the efforts that you guys have, and that can kind of bring it back and circle it back to how I met you.
Sure. Well, I met my husband on Match.com. We're
Whoop,
probably
whoop.
Sponsored by Match.com, right?
Right? This whole thing is brought to you by Match.com because my husband and I also met on Match.com. But anyway.
Isn't that great? Because he lived in Ellensburg while I lived on the west side, and Brandon is a chiropractic physician. And so when we met and went on our first date, I was suffering from elbow tendonitis, and I remember me telling him that, and he brags, "Oh, well, that's my specialty." And of course, our first date was a hike. And as soon as we get out the car, he's like, "Well, let me work on your arm." And he's doing an active release technique on me. And I'm sitting there like, "Ow, you're hurting me." But anyway, it was exactly what I needed because he really did heal me within about 3 weeks, which I had been having that pain for a while. So that's what Brandon does. And it's been great because the timing worked out that when I retired and moved to Ellensburg with him, I was able to help manage the office that he had and become the office manager. So it was great for me to get back into an office, working with people, working with staff, doing something a little bit different, but that's still in the health industry.
Yeah, I love that. And so that, for my listeners, that's how I was able to get in contact with Tanji, is my husband actually started out working in Brandon Bridgman's office there in Ellensburg when he was still in his undergrad. And that's what got my husband motivated to become a chiropractor himself. So it's kind of just comes full circle now that my husband has his own office here in Eastern Washington. We still knew Brandon. I met him a couple times. And then, you know, a few years ago, I remember hearing about like, oh, Brandon's dating this new girl and she's really into fitness. And I was like, oh yeah, I'd love to meet her one day. And finally happened at a seminar in kind of the western part of Washington near Vancouver. So it was just nice to finally like meet you face to face. And I was already like starstruck just because I've never done a physical fitness, you know, or a bikini competition, but I feel like pageantry is really similar in that same realm. And we can talk about more about that. But, you know, just was like, wow, like I'm meeting a celebrity. Like, but anyway, so she's just super nice, very easy to talk to. And I felt like she and I instantly kind of clicked together once we met at this seminar. But I did have a little side note question. And you said this when you were talking about your background and your history. And I just want to make a little funny joke too late after, but whatever. You said your mom could cook soul food. So I was like, does she mean like Seoul Korean food or does she mean like soul food? Like which one is it? Or is it both?
Oh, actually, amazingly, both. When I was referring to soul food, seriously, I barely even eat this stuff anymore. But I mean, everything from collard greens to chitlins. Like when my family from my dad's side would find out that my mother knew how to make the bomb chitlins, which is such a southern thing, they were so impressed. You know, but they really welcomed her and they taught her, you know, everything about that side of the culture, so that when my parents were raising us, we barely even knew the difference because I just grew up thinking like this is what we eat and this is what's unique and special to us.
I love that. Well, that actually opens up a whole other door that I wasn't intentionally going down, but I would just love to know, like, how have you been able to incorporate so many different vast diversities and cultural aspects into your life, and especially now that you're married to somebody else that comes from a completely different culture and background, like what would you say has been the most beneficial aspect of coming from two very different types of cultures, you know, with your dad being African American and then your mom being Korean?
Well, I think the first thing is to be focused on celebrating the differences and accepting it, where the history of America for a lot of things, whether it's sexuality, race, politics, everything is about if you're different, then we're afraid, right?
Mm.
So and I think that as a culture, we are all moving towards embracing that. That's what makes us unique and special, is that we are very different, and there's a lot to be celebrated. If you come from, my sister is married, her husband is Mexican, and my brother's wife is Japanese. And so this is like, so when you talk about cuisine, so we can make jokes about, if you go into an Asian person's house, you better take off your shoes. It's just almost a universal thing across, America. So when someone comes into my house, I try not to be super like anal about it, but I'm looking down at their feet, like, take your shoes off. And then when I go to my
Mentally noted in my head.
when I go to my brother's house, who lives in Korea, I'm sorry, he lives in Hawaii. You walk up to their garage, and it's so cute because they have a little girl, and there's like shoes just boom, 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 all outside the house, in the garage, because it's very common. Like, nobody wears the shoes in the house. And then I go into other people's houses, and they're like, oh, don't worry about it. I'm like, really? This feels really weird to walk through your living room with my shoes still on. So just little things like that. I really enjoyed it. And when I was in the military, I was so passionate about having embraced both of the cultures that I grew up with, that I got very involved in multi-joint cultural committees when I was in the Air Force. So I was like the president of the African American Club and the multi-joint committee. And I just remember just really enjoying learning about all the different cultures, whatever their nuances are, the cuisines, the talk, all of that, the lingo. It's been really, really beautiful. And it's helped me personally because, for example, Brandon and I went to see a comedy show the other day, and the comedian was Black, and he's married to a white woman, and he was explaining the difference between having Thanksgiving at the Black family's house versus at the white family's house, and how the staple dishes are very different. And so I feel like I have lived that, because I go over to Brandon's, family's house in Ellensburg, and they've got dishes that, like, I've never even had before. And then for us, it's the staple. We got to have macaroni and cheese. We got to have sweet potato casserole. We've got to have collard greens. And so, but I really enjoy being able to be exposed to both of that. And probably the biggest way that the experience and being versatile has helped me is in politics, and accepting and embracing that people I know, whether they're acquaintances or friends, we may have very different political opinions. And instead of being afraid and fearful of that, you just really seek to understand and embrace, and sometimes even celebrate that, hey, we don't see eye to eye on things, but that's the beauty of this country, is that we all get to have a voice and an opinion. And based on our life experiences, that's why we feel the way that we do. But we all have different life experiences.
Yes, I love that. It actually reminds me a lot of, number one, the quote that says we're more alike than we are different. So that comes to mind. But also, I've been listening to, on Audible, the Brene Brown book, Braving the Wilderness. And I just finished part of a chapter where she talks about there's no such thing as either you're with us or against us, and how we've been told that in our society, that if you don't see eye to eye with me on this, then you're on the complete other end of the spectrum. And it's not like that. It isn't black and white. It's not this or that. There's nuances. There's gray areas, whether the political issue is, gun control versus, or like abortion, or, even gay marriage, whatever it is. There's not like one way or the other. And it's either you're with us or against us. Like there's nuances. There's a difference of opinions, and that's okay. And it's okay to have a civil discourse among one another, and more than just like, oh, let's agree to disagree, because that's kind of a cop out. And even she says that in the book, that it's okay to have those conversations but not hate one another at the end of it. So I love that you focus on like, let's find the areas that we do have common ground and still love one another, and understand that our life experiences have led us to our personal beliefs.
Right.
So
right.
I love that. I did want to talk about your fitness, now that we've kind of talked about like some background things. Like, what first interested you in the realm of like fitness competitions, and what motivated you to start getting involved?
What's really neat is I started doing fitness competitions immediately after graduating from college. When I was in college, we had this amazing, I cheered for Air Force. And our cheerleading coach, I mean, at the time she was a woman in her early 30s, and she just had the most amazing fit, muscular body. And she also taught our aerobics classes. And we used to just all drool over her, like, oh my gosh, Coach Pfeffer is so amazing. She's got the most, sculpted legs and great toned arms. So I remember that was the first time that I really embraced not only that I had a muscular physique, but I saw my first woman outside of me that I thought, okay, she's very beautiful, love her body. Because we all grow up with different things that we're self-conscious about. And I grew up being self-conscious that I was very muscular. Because I remember I had memories of guys saying, yo, girl, how much do you bench? Or I would be at a dance club and a guy's like, wow, you're diesel. And it's like, that's kind of not what I was looking for. I was kind of hoping to be told that you think I look hot or whatever.
Right. Like, let me coach you on how to pick up a girl in a club. Like, let's have this conversation, dude.
And it's not even that they meant any disrespect, but I think the first thing I felt was what I told myself is you're telling me that I'm not feminine because I'm fit and because I have muscles, which most women at that time didn't. I feel different and I'm starting to struggle with just my own self-image. And so fitness, the number one reason that got me into competing in fitness, honestly, was I needed to emerge myself with a group of people that I could relate to. And so when I saw Fitness America pageant, and that's why when you said, yes, there's a similarity, it is a similarity. And that's how it all started, was with the Fitness America pageant, which was basically a beauty pageant for women that were very fit. And then fitness was the highlight, and they focused on it. And so that's what drove me to it, because I really wanted to be around other women that I felt like looked like me, that I could relate to and change my inner dialogue and how I saw myself. Because sometimes we tend to love others more than we love ourselves. And when that happens, sometimes loving others can teach you how to, in return, love yourself. And so for me, fitness competitions started because I wanted to change that insecurity I had that I wasn't feminine enough, even though I loved being fit. So now fitness competition I felt like gave me permission to be fit, and I evolved to accept that I get to define what femininity and beauty is. And that took like a decade.
Yeah, no, I totally get it. I mean, I'm still constantly struggling with my own, negative self-talk and self-image. And I think all women do. But you said it, you hit the nail on the head when you were like, if you can feed into others and you're also feeding into yourself. And there was an instance that came to my mind. Now it's like, I'm drawing a blank. So I'll have to circle back to it if I remember it. But I also noticed on some of your paperwork, you said you want to give because you have a full cup. Like if you give and pour into yourself, then you can pour into others. How do you help to inspire others through your own fitness journeys?
How do I inspire other people?
Mm-hmm.
Fitness can be very overwhelming. So the first thing we all have to do is set goals. No, let me back up. I actually think that we need to give ourselves grace and accept where we are right now, whether you are wanting to lose 20 pounds or you want to get more flexible. So I think if you start off with the inner dialogue of, I love myself, I'm gracious, and I accept exactly where I am right now. And then I need to set some goals. And I need to put a plan of action together and focus on that journey of, this is what I would like to do to get the end result, and not be so obsessed with the end result, because most people don't even walk down the path because they can't get over the fact that they're not at that destination yet. Yeah. And that's probably the biggest mistake we all make when we have a goal to go somewhere, is we keep getting distracted that we're not there yet. It's like, just keep walking.
Right. Think about the process and the journey rather than just the destination. Well, and that's actually what I was thinking about a minute ago, and it popped back in my head, of using that positive self-talk. And that's part of that journey that you're discussing, because I think so many women talk to themselves in a way that they would never talk to a girlfriend or somebody else that they're trying to encourage. I've heard it in another story where you wouldn't, if you had a toddler, right? If you had a baby toddler and she's walking across the floor for the first time and she made it all the way from the couch to the coffee table, you would praise her and be like, good for you. Like, you made it all on your own. Like, that's so amazing. You wouldn't say, well, yeah, you made it to the coffee table, but why haven't you made it all the way to the front door yet? But that's how we talk to ourselves. And so really focusing on that positive self-talk through the journey, whether they're starting out, at a fitness level, like you said, where they want to lose maybe just 5 pounds and kind of tone up, or maybe they want to lose 30 plus pounds and they really have a big goal in mind, like keeping that positive self-talk up the whole time and enjoying the journey and the process, and not just focusing on the destination.
Right. Absolutely.
I love that. So what piece of advice would you give to somebody that, is trying to push themselves and maybe start that journey, but they maybe haven't yet, or they're just not quite there? Like, what would you tell a woman to get going in that process?
So as you were mentioning before, the largest clientele that I work with are people that want to do physique competitions, and then I do have mainstream fitness clients as well. And it still seems to be the same. The first thing is we have to set a realistic goal. So for women that are wanting to either set a fitness goal because they want to look trim and they want to look like a bikini model, or I've got actual clients who want to get on stage to do a bikini competition, what typically scares them is, like I said, that end result of this is what I got to look like, or this is what I have to achieve. And if I don't achieve that, then I'm a failure. And I'm afraid to find that out. I'm afraid to find that out by walking through this journey. So I always say, find something that is achievable. So for example, for competitors, I'll say, why do you want to compete? Is it a transformation? Because I tell you what, if you get started today and give yourself 3 months, and even if you did 50%, you are only at 50%, your body will still get some results and you will look different in 3 months. You may not look what you envisioned for a year from now, but there's going to be results. And then some people might say, you know what, I just want to finish what I started. I want to start something and I want to finish it. It doesn't matter what the end result looks like. And then there's going to be those competitive people that are like, I want to get top 5, or I want to win, or I have to lose 20 pounds. And so I usually like to tell people, you've got to start with a goal that you know you can achieve. How about this? Would you feel better saying, I want to lose 20 pounds? Okay, so the new goal is either you're going to lose 20 pounds or you're going to work out consistently for 2 weeks. Which one do you think that most people would say, yeah, some people have hormone issues, or, their body's not responding, so the 20 pounds might not happen. But the I will work out for 2 weeks straight, that's literally an action that you physically do every day. And at the end of 2 weeks, you can mark down every day in your calendar that you worked out. That's a short-term goal that is achievable regardless to how your body responds. And then people realize, okay, I'll go with this one for now. I still want this goal, but I'm going to go with this one for now. And they do it, and that gives them the confidence they need to get to the next goal. And it's probably going to be 6 goals that take you to that final goal of losing 20 pounds. Because what's going to happen in the 2 weeks is they're probably going to lose a pound or 2, and they're going to be like, oh my gosh, I'm like 10% there. It's like, keep doing what you're doing. Stop thinking about so much that long-term goal. Focus on the short-term goal. So that's the first thing I would do is when people feel overwhelmed, it's because we're paralyzed by analyzing everything it's going to take to get to that long-term goal. Let's start simple and start with the short-term goal.
It totally makes sense. And it actually correlates to a lot of how I work with clients when it comes to styling. When I first meet with a client, of course they have this huge goal of like having their style on point 7 days a week, like walking out the door feeling amazing and getting dressed in under 5 minutes every single day. And it's like, okay, yes, we can totally get you there, but let's start first with, a closet cleanse, because we got to know what you have and what to work with. And it's not necessarily as fun to just focus on that, but it's part of the process. And I always tell my clients, like, trust the process, we'll get there. It just takes one step at a time. So I totally get that. And I love that. And I think it comes back to meeting people where they're at and then going from there. I love that. So when it comes to like fitness, I think there's so many life lessons that can be gained from doing something physically, because it helps tell your brain, like, I can do the hard things, or I can make goals and achieve them. So for instance, myself, I had a goal this year of doing a half marathon, and I didn't even care how long it took me. People were like, well, what's your goal to make it in? I was like, my goal is to finish and not collapse, which I did after I crossed the finish line. I'm like, okay, now I can like fall to pieces, but I've crossed the finish line. So in your life, like, what are some ways that fitness and or competitions have translated into other aspects of your life, or like personal goals? I'd just love to hear more about that.
Sure. Okay, so when I think about fitness, it really creates, when you have a fitness journey, you have to do a series of things, and you have to do them over and over again, and you have to do them consistently. And if you do that, you tend to master, right? And that could be mastering a skill. So for example, discipline is a requirement to be successful, let's say in a fitness journey. Because if you're not disciplined and you're all over the place, you're going to eat whatever you want, your exercise is going to be up and down, and you're not really going to get any results because you're not consistent. So it takes discipline to be consistent. What I found is that the skills that are needed to be successful in fitness can be taken anywhere. So for example, let's say I had the goal to compete in a bunch of fitness competitions, and I did that, but now I have a goal to read the Bible in a year. If I want to do that, it's going to take the same skills. I have to be disciplined. I have to pick a time. Instead of maybe picking a time to go do cardio, I'm picking a time to open up my Bible and read, right? And then I've got to be disciplined about it. I've got to be consistent. And even when I don't feel like it, I still do it. And that's what discipline is. And so that's what's been great about discipline in fitness, is that you can take that and do that in business. You can do that in your relationship. Be relentless in your pursuit and all those other areas. You just got to recognize that it translates into all areas of your life.
That word relentless, I think I might have to use that when I end up titling this episode, because I love that word. And I think it goes to a lot of other aspects, like we talked about, not only like your relationships or your business, but even just your health and your journey on that. Because, I went to a chiropractic seminar a couple years ago with my husband, and that was like the focus word of that seminar was like, be relentless, don't give up, like stay true to the core values that we have and your journey, and just keep doing the small action steps that will eventually get you to the goal. Because, like they say, a journey of 1,000 miles starts with one step, whatever that is. Reading the Bible in a year starts with reading one chapter at a time. You got to start somewhere. Right. I love that.
Right.
So I want to kind of switch gears. I know we talked a little bit about your core values and how they kind of stem from the Air Force values that were instilled in you, but what are some other values that dictate all your decisions? Like, is there anything else that you would like to add to that?
One thing that I think is a big deal right now, we live in a society where we're getting information overload, mainly because of social media, right? We have access to more information than we ever have before. Before, it was just magazines and TV. So we all kind of envied the, supermodels and the actors and all of that. And now I think we're getting bombarded with that with everybody, because now social media is showing you and giving you exposure to everybody's life. And so when I think about what impacts my decisions, I find that I have to protect myself more now than I ever have in the past, to not, number one, not get distracted, and to stay true to myself, right? So one person I really look up to, her name is Kaisa, and I'm sure you've heard of her. She's like a fitness sensation, and I was listening to a motivational speech that she was giving, where she was explaining to people, stop feeling the pressure to be so great at everything. You don't have to. You absolutely don't have to. What's more important than being great is figuring out, what are you passionate about? And if you're passionate, once you figured that out, everything you do will stem from that passion. And because you're passionate, you're going to be great. I think we live in a world now where people are so overwhelmed, and there's so many options and so many things to do. This happens, and this is, so let me just, kind of catch up. So I retired, and for 18 years, I was devoted to one single thing, primarily, and that was competing. Very easy to stay focused, and guess what? Become great, because I was focused, passionate on one thing, right? Mm-hmm. And so when I retired, what I started to go through is, okay, now what? Oh my gosh, I have so many options. I can do more of the posing, and I can do this. And it was like 8 different things I thought I wanted to do. And I felt like I sat around for a while saying like, I don't know what to do. And I think there was just a lot of pressure to feel like I needed to excel in all of these areas I had experience with, instead of just sitting back and really asking myself, what do I feel more passionate about? And then letting passion drive all of my decisions. So the answer for you, for what you just asked, is I believe that it's very important to be driven by passion.
It reminds me of that book, Simon Sinek's Find Your Why. I don't know if you've read that, but it comes down to like everything that you're passionate about comes down to your big why and your big reason in life. And then everything else stems from that. And if you have an instance in your life or an opportunity and it doesn't align with your big why, then you already know this is not meant for me, and I don't need to go down this path. And that's okay. Somebody else might be passionate about that, and that's their passion or their big why. So that's such a good thing to think about and focus on, especially in our world of being bombarded, like you said, with too many options or too many this or that. I am curious because of like your big why, your passion, now you have your own posing and fitness team right here in the Northwest where you help train other competitors. What does that even look like? What does a typical day look like in the life of Tanji Johnson?
Well, what's nice is people would be so surprised, but I'm actually less busy now than I have been in in the last 30 years. And so what's been nice, and that was difficult for me at first, because as soon as I retired, I felt like I needed to replace that time with whatever I needed to replace it with to still feel as busy. I mean, I felt like in business as an entrepreneur, I hustle. And you probably hear that term a lot. Oh yeah, you're hustling, you're getting it done, you're doing the marketing, you're doing the networking, you're building your craft, and you're learning the accounting, you're getting it all done. And I felt like I did that. I ran hard for 20 years, building multiple businesses and developing my career as a professional athlete. So once I got married, and now because I'm in a season where Brandon and I are trying to prepare to have our own family, I've really had to step back and say, I don't want to get pregnant while I'm in the midst of just being too busy. I want to step back and reevaluate, look back at everything I've done and be grateful and fulfilled that, I spent the last 40 years, being in 2 different careers and just fulfilling myself. But now what do I want to be doing over the next 20 years? Right? So when you think of leadership, that's something I'm passionate about. But leadership could be just being a leader in my family with my husband and with my future kids and with our stepsons, right? When I think of community engagement, it may not necessarily be in the fitness industry. It could be in politics or something different. So the true answer is I still feel like I am trying to finalize that. But what's great is I feel like it's totally okay because I'm not trying to impress anybody. I'm not trying to live for anybody. I'm doing me. And the number one thing I think we need to learn how to do wherever we're at in life is to just get better at proclaiming. I've had to tell people this is a more restful season for me. And that's, it's weird for people to hear that. It's like, what does that mean? I'm proclaiming that it is okay to rest. So for me, when I wake up in the morning, first of all, one thing, there's only a couple of days a week that I have to get up at a certain time. So I do have some in-home personal training clients that I train. And so for them, my days start a little bit earlier, like 6:30 in the morning. On the days where I don't have an 8 a.m. session, I sleep and I wake up when I feel like it, which is so awesome. I don't think I've done that in the last 30 years. So
yes, I love that.
I wake up.
You've definitely earned it.
That's how I feel. So I wake up when I feel like it, and then I usually will go to the gym and get a session in. And then when I come back, there's like this ritual where I make myself my coffee or tea. And then I have a couple of different breakfasts that I rotate through, but I will make myself breakfast. And Brandon's usually gone off to one of our 2 clinics, so he's gone. And I literally every day am in this presence of, I enjoy my home. I'm enjoying my home. I'm enjoying giving myself something good to eat to nourish my body. And then that typically turns into, I'll go into my office and I'll start every day. I update our QuickBooks. And so I do the QuickBooks for my business. So the first maybe 20, 30 minutes of my day starts with finances and accounting. And then after that, my days are different. So either I'll have a client engagement day where I'll either be scheduled for one-on-one posing sessions or personal training or consultation. So I go to our office in Bellevue and I'm meeting with people, or it'll be a work from home day where I basically will be doing client programming or planning. So client programming could be I'm writing out nutrition plans, workout plans, fitness choreography plans, or I'm doing business planning like marketing for my competition, securing sponsors, things like that. And so the most difficult thing is because I'm like working from home and I'm not as busy as I used to be, is being very disciplined about my time. And honestly, so there's times where I'm like, here's what I believe about that. If you want to be productive, you need to schedule and plan for it. Otherwise, there is way too much that distracts us from what we need to get done. The other thing is, if you don't absolutely have to be productive every day of the week, every moment of the day, proclaim that it is okay that you don't have to be productive. And so for me, that's what some of my days look like. So I probably have about 3 or 4 days a week that I commit myself to a certain amount of work and being productive. And for the first time in my life, there are days, and it could be a Thursday. Thursday's my off day. And I could go do a hair appointment, get my nails done, sit around at the house, talk on the phone, but I'm not going to schedule it because I'm going to do whatever I feel like and it's totally going to be okay. And I'm telling you that is very new for me because the background that I come from, being in the military, being a fitness competitor whose every moment is regimented, that was very difficult for me to adjust to. But I feel like I'm succeeding more at just being mindful and living my life to the fullest instead of being driven all the time. I think there's a time and place for it. But for me, I had to put room in my schedule to do nothing. And it's so fun.
I love that. And just truly being present, like when you are there, maybe on your off day, if you are getting your hair done or calling a friend to chat, like really focusing on the conversation and what's going on rather than being like, okay, I need to get off this call by this time so I can go back to doing this or that. Like being, like you said, mindful and being present for the ones that you love. I love that. What's funny is Thursday's my kind of like off day too. I'm like, okay, if I'm going to schedule a hair appointment, even though my hairstylist, oh my gosh, I have to schedule out with her like 3 months in advance. Oh, so I always schedule on a Thursday because I'm like, okay, I don't schedule clients on Thursdays. I don't see so-and-so on Thursdays, so I can do dentist or hair or coffee with a friend on Thursdays. So I totally get you. Right. I love that. Well, as we kind of, wrap up this conversation, I always like to end on a question with all of my guests, and I always preface it by saying it's very open to interpretation. So you can take this whatever way you want to go with it. But I always like to ask, what does it mean to do things with style and grace to you?
Okay, I think that's a really, really awesome question. What does it mean to do things with style and with grace? Well, it's funny because, when you think of style, you're going to think of like your personal style, and that's how you present yourself. And so for some people, that might mean colors or patterns or textures or exactly what you wear. And then when I think of grace, I think of more the soul, right? Like who you are. And so a lot of what that means to me is, number one, how you treat people and how you regard other people. And in addition to that, how you regard yourself. So when I think of, if I wanted to say, I am someone who exudes style and grace, right? The biggest component for that is for people to look at me and say, I feel like Tanji is somebody who has the graciousness to love herself and love others. She's very open with herself and she's open to others. It's a very to and from relationship. But when I think of the word grace, I think of all of that self-love that we need to have for ourselves that we can give to other people. And then when it comes to style, it's really about what do you want to communicate to people around you, right? So I'm a big color person, as you can see. And so
she's wearing bright orange for those of you listening.
I think about that sometimes, like when I was training my clients, I would show up at the gym and everybody would always say, they would just talk about the energy that I would bring into a room. And a lot of it is not just because of my personality, but it's also what I wore and it's the colors that I wore. Because every time I walked in, it's like, woo, bright pink and orange and teal and all these high energy colors, you know what I mean? So when I think about style, I think about what do you want to communicate to people and how that you dress, and is that going to come through in your style?
Yes, that's totally what I work with my clients on. I always develop with them what I call a style statement. And my question to help generate that is like, what do you want to portray to the world or convey to the world without saying a word?
Yeah.
So I love that. Yeah.
Well,
where can my listeners find you, follow you, stalk you in all the positive ways anyway?
Well, I would say on Instagram, it's at official Tanji Johnson. Just because sometimes in my world, people like to make up fake profiles for you to follow, and I just don't know why people do that, but it's official Tanji Johnson. Facebook, it's Tanji Johnson Bridgman, and then website is tanjijohnson.com.
I love it. Well, and that just shows that there's something worthy of being followed if you're having people make fake stalker accounts. So congrats to you. All right. Well, thank you, Tanji. I've just enjoyed talking with you, and I hope that my listeners have learned as much from you as I did.
Me too.
Hey, ladies, thanks for listening, and we hope you enjoyed today's episode. To help empower more women, please be a doll and rate, review, and subscribe to this podcast. For show notes and other free resources we mentioned today, go to stylebydeidra.com.